Obviously, the best part is getting to know all the students. I mean, in my job, I know names on lists and I know faces, people that walk around Schoonover Center, but this actually gives me a chance to put those two things together. So getting to know the students is the highlight and the reason I want to do it. But also, being in DC, when you're a communication person, it's sort of like going to an amusement park for your mind, because there's just so much that goes on here. And so I don't think you can help but be, sort of inspired and excited about the people that you get to meet when you're in this program. And so that's also a lot of fun. Heba is very persuasive. So she talked to me about it, and because I was able to do it outside of the normal academic year, it was much easier to fit into sort of my professional schedule. And so sort of the stars aligned where I was able to do it, and it really didn't take a whole lot of convincing. I mean, spending time with really great students for a week in DC. I mean, what's not to love about that? So I was excited to be able to do that. Yeah, so I mean, there are a ton of things, and some of that's going to be individualized to each person. But I think first of all, learning what life is like if you actually have to live in a city, right? And some people grow up in one and they know, but even me, just being here for a week, having to figure out, okay, how am I going to get to Safeway, get groceries, and then get that back to the apartment? I mean, you got to figure those things out. It's different than Athens, and probably even different than if you lived in Columbus or Cleveland or Cincinnati. So there's that part of it. There's the networking part of it. So you get to meet a lot of people, oftentimes Bobcats, that are working in a career that you could start to envision yourself doing, and then understanding that, what you could look like, 5 or 10 years later. I think that's really helpful, to a large degree. And then I think the third thing that maybe people don't think about as much is that, like for these first 2 weeks of the program where you're in class with Heba and then somebody else or whoever it ends up being, that's really focused. And so spending, a full week, sort of learning with someone, whether it's Heba, me, or another faculty member, there's something that you get out of that you don't get when you're taking 5 classes back in Athens. And so just sort of that focused element of it, I think, is exciting, both for the teacher and also for the students. Yeah, so the original intent of the class, and we are following through on this, is that I really wanted everyone in the class to think strategically about where the field was going and how they were going to personally adapt to that, and trying to drive home the point that if you're a forward-thinking thinker about the field and you actually try to influence that in some way, you become much more valuable to your own growth, but you also become more valuable to an organization that you're a part of. You become a leader quicker, I think. So that was the focus of the class. What I did not anticipate, but probably should have, is that we ended up focusing a lot on communication regulation and government policy and communication, because I think that's something that is a little bit new to all of us, even me. And so spending a few hours and then having a guest speaker that was an expert in that, I think was really interesting. And that was a path that I didn't know we were going to go down, and we did, and it ended up being really fascinating, I think. So yeah, it's such a great question, and it's a balancing act, because there is an economy of scale, so that if you have more students, then it becomes cheaper for everyone. So there's that to think about. And then at the same time, when you're actually in the program and you're doing all this stuff, you come to realize that you could get so big, or you could even just have a few more students and have that go over a threshold that makes it really hard to manage. And so what we have to figure out is how to sort of balance that. Like, I think we should probably be just a little bit bigger by including some other majors that could apply for the program. But then at the same time, when you're trying to navigate the city, especially during these first couple of weeks, you could see how it would be hard if you were walking around with 25 students, right? So you got to balance that. But I also am really committed in one way or another of making this program cheaper so that more students can afford to participate. And so whether that's through having a few additional students, that might be an option. But we're also trying to talk to donors and say, how can you help the students pay for their housing, and to me that would be such a huge game changer. I mean, we've done a lot to reduce the housing costs from when this program first started, but you can think about your own situation. If you didn't have to pay for housing and didn't have to worry about the fact that you had to pay for housing here and in Athens, and those sorts of things, how much that would change the equation. So we're trying to do all those things to really make this be a program that any student inside the college could have an option to do. And what I really hope is that money is never going to be a barrier. It is right now, and we need to change that. I think that, I go back to one of the earlier questions you asked, and one of the benefits is that you get to totally immerse yourself. And so I think that the advice that I would give is that when you get into a program like this, and there are others, I mean, we have other experiential learning opportunities that are awesome, just like this is. But when you get into one, and if it's in the DC program, totally immerse yourself, because the more it is sort of the type of thing where the more energy you put into your experience, the more you're going to get out of it. And what's so impressive about the group that's here, that this is my first time doing it too, and the group that's here this summer, is I'm watching all of you interact with the guests that we have, and just taking part in the experiences. I can see that you're putting a lot of energy into it, and to me that's what you do to maximize what you get out of it. And I'm proud to be with you all this summer, and it's exciting to do that. But I hope that by the time you get to the end of the summer, you look back on it and you go, I'm a changed person in some way because of what I just did. So